I stopped playing Yu-Gi-Oh! In 2005 because I didn't like the direction the game was going. Many of the new cards being released at the time seemed like intentionally powered down versions of cards I'd grown accustomed to, many of those cards of which were deemed too powerful or centralizing for tournament play. So after what seemed like a lifetime of collecting the 13-year-old me, I was left with a pile of a deck, probably indistinguishable from the sea of all the other traditional format decks at the time that I could play, with my friends, on sidewalks and picnic tables.
Scapegoat! Now I'm gonna use reasoning. Second card level, weakling.
4.
Wrong! Awesome and Soul Purity and Light. Her special ability, you lose 300 attack points. 1,900, she will attack.
Activate Mask of Weakness on that, lowering its attack 700, so it's destroyed.
God damn.
Unsanctioned, uncompetitive, just for fun. Except, it wasn't fun anymore. Going to a regional tournament and needing to leave these friends behind, or finally unlocking them in the newest video game only to have them be completely unusable, it all made me have to accept the harsh reality that my favorite cards, the ones that kept my interest in the game, were metaphorically sealed away, never to be used in actual competitive play ever again. I fundamentally understood the reasoning and why it needed to be done for the sake of the game, but as for myself, I couldn't find a reason to care about the game anymore now that my favorite cards no longer had a home. But what were these cards that became my favorites? Well, 2 of them were the heart of the infamous Chaos decks spawned from that era. Black Luster Soldier and Chaos Emperor Dragon, Envoy of the Beginning and Envoy of the End respectively. Super powerful monsters, light and darkness embodied, beginning and end embodied, reflections of each other, retrains of some of our earliest nostalgic monsters, epic in every way imaginable. But then what do we have? This inconspicuous little raven? How can that 200 attack stat possibly compare to those Goliaths? Well, let me try to set the scene for you. Growing up, I didn't have access to the internet. From the entirety of the time I was invested in Yu-Gi-Oh!, all of the content I digested from it was either through magazines, like Beckett Collector or Shonen Jump, television, where it was fair to assume that cards we saw on the Yu-Gi-Oh! TV show had a chance of coming out in the actual card game, or friends that had internet and could relay information they'd seen to me. And I'll tell you right now, almost all news of upcoming new cards came from friends finding out about it on the internet. Alright Andy, the next Yu-Gi-Oh! Set is going to be called Pharaonic Guardian. There's going to be a heavy Egyptian theme. A significant percent of the cards you get in packs will be miscut and stick out from the rest, but nobody is ever going to talk about it. And if you pull a card called Guardian Sphinx, we'll convince you that the card doesn't do what it says it does on the card until you trade us the card, at which point it will do what it says it does on the card. So let me try to contextualize this even more. I didn't have many people to play with. There was no local game store in my area, and my play group consisted of anywhere from 4 to 10 people max. Because I was a naive narcissist, I of course believed I was the best among us. Even though my friends and associates had access to information from the internet, and more ready access to cards since they had transportation to actual game stores and the internet to obtain them, I still believed my heart of the cards was stronger and that I'd really had the most skill and rudimentary knowledge of the game. So try to imagine, just for a moment, how mind-shattering it was for me to see a card that I had never seen before. Admittedly, despite my limited resources, I did know most of the cards around that time, but there were a few that slipped through my grasp, never shown in any of my Beckett issues, never seen on TV, never owned by anyone in my playgroup. One of these cards was Yata. All I knew is that it was a spirit. It was said to be the most powerful among all the spirits. My point of comparison being Hino Kagutsuchi, which I distinctly remember being one of my first pulls from Legacy of Darkness. Well damn, it must be incredible to outclass that, I thought to myself. And over time, more information about the mythical Yata would slowly be revealed to me. It can lock your opponent out of the game? You don't need the tribute for it? It only has 200 attack? The more the mystery of Yata unraveled, the more I yearned to know. I wanted Yata for myself. I can't put into words how elusive and mythical this card was. If it truly existed, I didn't expect I'd ever actually see one in person in my lifetime. But I did. I don't remember how or where or even exactly when I first came into contact with the mythical spirit, but when I did, I remember feeling a strange sense of conflicting emotions, simultaneously being so excited to have finally caught a glimpse of this legendary card, yet surprised that after all the speculation of what this card looked like, it was just an unassuming purple little bird. Yata wasn't some big scary creature ready to dismantle any opponent that dare cross its path. It was just a misunderstood wandering spirit trying to find its own way, and that resonated heavily with me back in my adolescence, whether I was consciously aware of it or not. I ended up acquiring the card, and that Yata is this very same Yata I still have here. Again, I don't remember how or what I traded for it. All that matters is from that point on, Yata became my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh card. So let's not get it twisted. Yata was a powerful card. When I threw it in my decks, there was a palpable sense of, with great power comes great responsibility within my cards. Knowing Yata had the power to lock an opponent out of a game if the cards aligned correctly, it sent me on an even bigger power trip than I'd already been on after convincing myself I was the best among my play group. But the thing is, Yata didn't win me every game. In fact, I'd say my win rate was probably about the same as it'd been before getting Yata. Yet even when I'd lose a game, I'd feel content, knowing that my bird friend was by my side. It's ironic, because Yata, while inherently making my deck more powerful, didn't make me necessarily fare any better versus my friends as they continue to implement new cards and strategies they'd witness online or at their game stores. And now that my deck was becoming more powerful and more consistent, I was caring less about wins and more about fun. Meanwhile, in the rest of the competitive Yu-Gi-Oh scene, Yata and Chaos Emperor Dragon were stretching the meta to the absolute breaking point, culminating in the creation of the Advanced format, the new tournament format that ushered for the banning of certain powerful and centralizing cards, including Yata. So fast forward to October 2004. My cousin and I decided to enter our very first regional tournament. It was a 2-hour drive with our family, but it was going to be well worth it, I thought. Visions of grandeur fueled by the absolute biggest power trip I'd probably ever been on made me so confident in myself that I didn't even mind setting my buddy Yata aside for the occasion. We made it to the tournament, and I took 198th place out of 199 competitors. My reality came crashing down around me. Not only was I just another insignificant player in an unimaginably huge pool of players, but that beating made me realize that I wasn't even the best among my play group either. Shoutouts to my cousin Ty for placing much better than me, by the way. I don't know why you let me register with the unfriendly Amazon in my deck, but hey. Needless to say, the tournament, while dejecting and ruthlessly embarrassing, was humbling and eye-opening for me in a multitude of ways. It showed me that Yu-Gi-Oh was way bigger than my little playgroup back in my small town. It showed me how much depth there really was to the competition, and it lit a new fire in me to improve and to really take my game to the next level. Except that never happened. I hated the advanced format for the sole reason that it forbade me from using my favorite cards. I was still able to play with Yata amongst my friends, but ever since that tournament experience, the games hadn't felt the same. There was a lingering sensation that these sidewalk duels weren't real Yu-Gi-Oh anymore. I wasn't even aware of it, but I'd reached a crossroads. Either fully commit to getting better at real Yu-Gi-Oh and not enjoy my experience because I couldn't use Yata, or continue playing with Yata and Chaos Emperor Dragon and the like, and stagnate my growth as a player. In the end, I couldn't commit to either path, and walked away from Yu-Gi-Oh entirely. These weren't the only factors, of course. There was a lot of reasons for me to no longer have an interest in Yu-Gi-Oh! Anymore. Not the least of which being that, in my adolescence, particularly once I hit high school in 2005, I went into a very deep social isolation. I couldn't relate to anyone anymore, felt like such an outcast, and spent most of my time daydreaming about finding happiness. I had literally become what Yata had been in my mind, a lonely, misunderstood, wandering spirit just trying to find my own way. That sense of isolation permeated into my subconscious and stuck with me well into adulthood. Within the past year, I've come to terms with myself, accepting the burdens of my isolated adolescence and realizing that I don't need to carry them anymore. Just because I'm different doesn't mean I need to shut everybody out and spend time daydreaming about finding scenarios where I find happiness. I'm free to find it on my own, for real. It's taken me many years, but I'm finally at peace with my place in the world. And now you're telling me, after all these years, they finally let Yata out of its metaphorical cage too? A coincidence? Probably. But I gotta say, I have mixed feelings again, the way I did all those years ago when I first laid eyes on Yata. I don't know whether to be happy that I lived to see the day that my feathered friend is free after all this time, or sad to know that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is so far removed from what it was when I enjoyed the game, that Yata is no longer on the spectrum of cards that need to be banned for being too powerful.